There was silence in the courtroom. The judge, an elderly man with thick glasses and silver hair, leaned forward and gazed at the self-assured 12-year-old black child. As he lightly tapped his gavel against the desk, a gradual smile appeared on his face. "All right, young man," the judge responded in a strong but humorous tone. "Truth or lying? Let's play a game together. We'll see if you can outsmart me once I ask you some questions. Does that seem fair?" The courtroom was filled with laughing. The child did not laugh. He was wearing a well-ironed suit that was excessively large for his diminutive stature. With his keen brown eyes fixed on the judge's, he merely nodded. The judge leaned back in his chair and cleared his throat. His smile grew as he asked the first inquiry. "According to the law, an individual is presumed innocent unless proven guilty. Is it true or false?" The youngster did not blink. "Lie," he replied. There was a gasp in the courtroom. The judge's eyebrows went up. "And why is that too?" According to the boy calmly. "Because in reality, people are treated guilty first and have to prove their innocence, especially if they're black." The judge's grin dimmed a bit. He looked at the courtroom audience and shuffled in his seat. A few whispered their agreement. Others muttered with surprise. "Okay," the judge went on, his tone a bit less lighthearted. "Let's give it another go. In every case, a judge must be totally impartial and fair. Is it true or false?" A knowing smile curved the boy's lips. "Tell a lie." The judge scowled. "Describe." The boy's response came naturally because judges are human. And whether they acknowledge it or not, people are biased. "For instance, you've already determined that I'm just a young child who has no idea what he's talking about. Your bias is that." Shocked whispers erupted in the courtroom. The jurors' cheeks flushed. There was a piercing crack when the gavel fell. "Put in order." He let out a bark. There was silence once more in the courtroom. The judge rubbed his temple and inhaled deeply. As he looked at the youngster, he became acutely aware that this would not be the easy game he had anticipated. He had undervalued him, and now he sensed that he was going to lose. The courtroom had been humming with excitement earlier that day. Reporters sat in the back rows, whispering to each other while their cameras flashed. The city has taken notice of the case. A youthful genius, an unjust arrest, and a judge with a reputation for making harsh decisions. With his hands folded neatly in front of him, 12-year-old Marcus Jackson stood between his mother and his public attorney. He didn't flinch. He appeared unfrightened. Indeed, he appeared entirely composed. It had been an error to make the arrest. That's what the police wanted people to think anyway. Officers barged into the public library where Marcus was seated and accused him of being a part of a recent break-in. The proof? An ambiguous description of a black boy wearing a sweatshirt. They took Marcus away in handcuffs, but it didn't matter that he was reading a book on constitutional law. His arrest video had gone viral. People were furious. Outrage, however, did not equate to justice. Marcus now found himself in front of Judge Richard Wallace, a judge known for imposing severe punishments. The judge peered over his glasses at him. "Do you know why you're here today, son?" Marcus raised his chin. "Your Honor, indeed. Are you aware of the charges against you?" "Indeed." The judge's glasses were corrected. "Before we start, do you have anything to say?" Marcus paused before continuing. "I want to speak for myself." The room was filled with gasps. His mom took hold of his arm. "Marcus." The youngster, however, shook his head. He had already decided. The amusement sparkled in Judge Wallace's eyes. "Do you wish to practice law on your own?" "Indeed." The judge laughed. "That's brave." "Astute," Marcus clarified. The judge laughed once again. "That's okay, young man. Let's check to see how intelligent you believe yourself to be." That was the beginning of it. A game, an examination, an intellectual contest between a 12-year-old legal whiz and an experienced judge. Eager to witness the show, the courtroom leaned forward. However, nobody was ready for what was about to unfold. Not even the judge. Marcus was going to completely upend the case. And the judge would discover something horrifying before he knew it. He was slipping. The judge adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. He thought this would be funny, a little lesson in humility for a brazen youngster. Judge Wallace had just discovered he was up against a grandmaster when Marcus Jackson transformed the courtroom into a checkerboard. The judge leaned forward and remarked, "All right, Marcus, Let's see how well you understand the law. I'll offer you the opportunity to introduce yourself because you have decided to represent yourself." Marcus nodded and moved forth with the assurance of an experienced attorney. All of a sudden, nobody noticed that his suit was still too big. It was not his clothes that filled the room, but his presence. "Your Honor," he started in a firm voice. "In addition to being a defendant, I am also a symbol of a broken system as I stand before you today. There was no probable grounds for my arrest. Just the hue of my skin and the presumption that I must be guilty led to my accusation. However, I shall demonstrate today that the law, your law, was broken. It was the people who arrested me, not me." There was a startled quiet in the courtroom. The reporters even ceased typing. The judge lightly tapped the bench with his fingertips. "Young man, that's a serious charge." Marcus tilted his head and replied, "It's not an accusation. It's true." The crowd echoed with murmurs. With a sigh, the judge turned to face the tall, sharply dressed prosecutor in a navy suit. "I take it that the state is prepared to provide its evidence, Mr. Callahan?" The prosecutor got up and grinned a little. He had also undervalued the boy. He was prepared to correct him immediately, though. "Yes, Your Honor," Callahan responded as he moved forward. "The defendant was recognized by a witness, and the state has security footage showing him close to the crime site." Marcus did not recoil. Disapproval. Judge Wallace's eyebrows went up. "For what reasons?" Marcus stated calmly that being close to a crime does not equate to committing it. "I would also like to view this alleged video." The magistrate gave a nod. "Let's check it out." The courtroom screen flashed to life. An image of a person wearing a hoodie passing a convenience shop appeared on a blurry black and white film. It was gloomy. The face of the guy was hardly discernible. "This was taken just minutes before the store was broken into," Callahan remarked with assurance. "This person fits the description our witness provided." Marcus crossed his arms. "Which description?" Callahan scowled. "I'm sorry," Marcus reiterated. "You said I matched the description." "What was the description then?" He looked at his notes, the prosecutor said. It was stated that the suspect was a young, black man in a hoodie. Marcus exhaled deeply and slowly. "To be clear, my arrest was solely due to the fact that I am a black child wearing a hoodie?" Once more, the courtroom hummed. Callahan's mouth clenched. "You were nearby. The witness also attested to this." "Which eyewitness?" Marcus interrupted. Callahan sighed, obviously annoyed. "They will soon be brought in to testify." Marcus gave a nod. "Excellent, because I want to ask them some questions." The magistrate raised his hand. "Let's continue this. Do you have more solid proof than a hazy video and an ambiguous description, Mr. Callahan?" After hesitating, Callahan shook his head. "No, Your Honor, not now." Marcus grinned a little. "Fascinating." The magistrate bent forward. "Okay, Marcus, why don't you tell us where you were when the crime was committed, given your confidence?" Marcus straightened his necktie. "Thank you. The city library was where I was." Callahan laughed. "Can you demonstrate that?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "I can also demonstrate something even more intriguing." The judge's gaze narrowed. "What is that too?" The bailiff turned to Marcus. "I want to provide my library checkout records as proof, Your Honor." Throughout the courtroom, there was a low gasp. Callahan scowled. "What does that prove?" Marcus claimed that in addition to being at the library, I also checked out a book just as the business was being stolen. He looked across to the judge. "The receipt has the timestamp printed on it. It's indisputable evidence that I wasn't present." The judge's mouth pushed shut. "Bring the document forward, bailiff." As the bailiff gave the judge the receipt, the courtroom watched. He glanced at it rapidly, his face inscrutable. He sighed after a long moment. "According to this receipt, you checked out a book at 8:42 p.m. exactly," Marcus said. "At 8:40 p.m., the business was robbed. I couldn't possibly have done it." Callahan's face went white. The prosecutor turned to Marcus. His voice was quiet yet strong. "I was detained without any solid proof. You only made assumptions when you brought me here. And now since you underestimated me, your whole argument is collapsing." The judge rubbed his temple and let out a breath. "Okay, let's have a little break. We'll meet again in 20 minutes. His gavel pounded. "However, The doors to the courthouse flew open as people got up to stretch. A frantic-looking policeman burst in. Panting, he called, "Your Honor, we received a report just now. The true suspect has been apprehended, and he's already admitted it." The room went cold. Everybody looked at Marcus. He remained silent. He merely grinned. The courtroom fell into a thick hush. Still gasping from his hasty entry, the policeman pulled up a manila envelope. Only 15 minutes ago, the actual suspect was apprehended breaking into another store. He admitted to both of the offenses, including the one Marcus was charged with, when questioned. After giving the officer a long look, Judge Wallace turned slowly to Marcus. With an unreadable face, the 12-year-old genius stood tall. All along, he had known it. The judge's face darkened as he drummed his fingers on his desk. "Are you telling me, officer, that this youngster is being tried for a crime that someone else recently confessed to?" The officer rocked uneasily. "Your Honor." "Indeed." Throughout the courtroom, murmurs broke out. Cameras flashed. Reporters scrambled to take notes, and Marcus's mother clutched her chest in a state of emotional turmoil. The prosecutor, Callahan, tightened his jaw. He had been so confident, so cocky. He appeared foolish now. Judge Wallace, obviously annoyed, let out a breath through his nose. "Do you have an explanation for this, Mr. Callahan?" Callahan hesitated before opening his mouth. There was no way to explain it without making him appear inept. In real time, his argument had just fallen apart. The magistrate looked back at Marcus. He spoke in a softer tone now, but with a new tone of respect. "You knew, didn't you, Marcus?" Marcus gave a nod. "I was innocent, I knew that. I only needed time to demonstrate it." The judge rubbed his temples and moaned. "It's a catastrophe." He sat up straight after taking a deep breath. Officially, Marcus Jackson is no longer charged. This case is dropped. From the rear of the courtroom came a cheer. With a rush, Marcus's mother threw her arms around him. "I knew you would disprove them, darling." Sobbing, she cried onto his shoulder. Marcus gave her a hug in return, but his thoughts were still active. He was victorious. However, there was something wrong with this. He had been arrested far too quickly by the cops. Despite having virtually no solid evidence, the prosecutor had pushed too hard. And now the genuine suspect was conveniently apprehended just as he was going to dissect the case. There was a problem. The judge restored order to the room by slamming his gavel. "The court has been adjourned." Marcus, however, shouted up as people started to disperse. "Hold on." They all turned to watch him. The judge scowled. "The case is over, Marcus. You can leave now." "I understand," Marcus answered. "However, I would like to ask the officer a question." With a sudden unease, the officer moved. "Yes." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You mentioned that the actual culprit was apprehended 15 minutes ago." "That's correct," said the officer. "And he immediately confessed?" The cop paused. Marcus cocked his head. "Yes." "That's strange." There was silence once more in the courtroom. Judge Wallace bent forward. "Why is that strange?" "Because, according to Marcus, confessions don't typically occur so quickly. If a suspect is caught in the act, they may try to negotiate, request legal representation, or deny it. But this person just came clean right away. I don't get that." Desperate to put an end to this nightmare, Callahan plunged in. "The case is over, Marcus. You're at liberty. Give it up." Marcus, however, shook his head. "No, there's a problem, and I'm curious as to what." He felt his mother pull at his arm. "We may go home now, baby. We shouldn't risk it." Marcus, however, had already faced the police once before. Where was this suspect apprehended? The cop took a swallow. "Down on 5th Street, I guess." Marcus squinted his eyes. "5th Street? On the opposite side of the city, that is." The policeman gave a nod. "Indeed, but—" Marcus interrupted him. "So how did he manage to be in 2 locations at once?" Shock spread around the courtroom. Judge Wallace's forehead wrinkled. "Marcus, what do you mean?" Marcus' thoughts were racing as he turned to face the judge. He was in the midst of committing another crime if he was apprehended breaking into a store on 5th Street. When did he have the opportunity to come clean about the initial heist? The cop's face became white. Marcus pushed harder. "And what specifically did he say if he did confess?" With an anxious expression, the The cop licked his lips. He claimed to have done it. That's all. Marcus looked down at him. Did he provide specifics? The cop paused. Well, not precisely. Was the store specifically mentioned by him? Marcus shoved. The officer rocked uneasily. No, not precisely. Marcus crossed his arms. That isn't a confession, then. It's a cover-up. There was a startled silence in the courtroom. Judge Wallace's face grew serious. Officer, who gave you the command to say this? The cop tensed up. My superior just informed me that the matter was resolved. Who is your boss? Marcus inquired. The officer's jaw clenched. Judge Wallace's gavel slammed. The question will be answered by you. The policeman winced. However, the courtroom's rear doors flew open before he could say anything more. With stern expressions, 2 additional officers barged in. The first to speak was a tall, broad-shouldered man wearing a badge that shone in the fluorescent lights. That's enough, he stated in a steely voice. This case is concluded. Everyone must return home. Marcus felt his heart race. There was a serious problem. Judge Wallace scowled. Who are you? The man said icily. Captain Reynolds. And I'm here to ensure that this doesn't escalate. The courtroom as a whole appeared to freeze. Marcus took a swallow. He was unaware of the magnitude of what he had broken. The authorities now didn't want him to delve any farther. Judge Wallace's expression froze. Do you mean to tell me that a police captain is entering my courtroom to thwart the administration of justice? Reynolds did not flinch. This is more than one situation, I assure you. Give it up. The judge arose, scarcely able to control his rage. Leave my courtroom now. Reynolds grinned icily. Your Honor, use caution. Not every case is supposed to be won. His cops trailed behind him as he turned and left. Behind them, the door banged. There was silence for a long time. Then Marcus let out a breath, his thoughts racing. His lawsuit was won. However, he had also discovered something far more significant. Something hazardous. The actual battle was about to start. Tension permeated the courtroom atmosphere. It had been witnessed by everybody. The manner in which Captain Reynolds had entered as though he were the owner. The way he had attempted to silence everyone with a few words. Marcus Jackson, however, wasn't the type of child to overlook things. He had read law books for years, studied the rules, and learned the ins and outs of the system. And if he was certain of anything, it was this. You're getting near to the truth when someone advises you to stop looking. Judge Wallace's fingers gripped the bench as he sat rigidly in his chair. He was keeping a close eye on the doors where Reynolds had just gone. Marcus stepped forward. Your Honor, he said clearly. You see what just took place? The judge looked at him. Indeed, Marcus. I observed. There was silence in the courtroom. The prosecutor, Callahan, appeared uncomfortable. Reporters in the rear were taking notes as quickly as they could. The judge then rubbed his temples and moaned. Marcus, however, paid close attention to me. He looked the boy in the eyes. This is no longer merely a case. This is not the same thing. It's also risky. Marcus rounded his shoulders. That implies that we need to take action. With a quivering voice, his mother took hold of his arm. Please, baby. Your lawsuit was won by us. Before something goes wrong, let's head home. Marcus faced her. Something's already gone wrong, Mom. I had no justification for my arrest. Without any proof, they intended to put me in jail. And now, the truth is being concealed by the cops. He gave a headshake. I can't simply leave. After examining him for some time, Judge Wallace let out a deep sigh. Really, you won't let this go, will you? Marcus gave a headshake. The judge took a seat back. All right, but we need to be clever if we're going to do this. We require evidence. Genuine evidence that a larger event is occurring. Marcus gave a nod. Next, we begin with the admission. Callahan laughed. For heaven's sake, Marcus, this case is over. You prevailed. Why do you continue to dig? Marcus faced him, his expression unreadable. Since I'm certain you were aware. Callahan's arrogant look wavered. I'm sorry, Marcus remarked. You knew this case was weak. The evidence against me was garbage, as you knew. Nevertheless, you pushed it. Why? Callahan's cheeks flushed. All I was doing was my job. No, Marcus responded, taking a step forward. You were performing the duties of another person. Who instructed you to ensure my defeat? The crowd echoed with gasps. Callahan's mouth tightened. He looked across to the judge. This is ludicrous, Your Honor. He is only a child. He has no idea how the system operates. Judge Wallace, however, did not stop Marcus. He leaned forward instead. In fact, I believe he knows it better than most. Callahan took a swallow. Now he appeared anxious. Marcus went on. The alleged confession was made too quickly. The actual suspect was apprehended at the ideal time. And now a police captain entered a courtroom and attempted to close it down. His arms were folded. And it's no accident. It's a cover-up. Callahan had a pallid face. This is crazy. Judge Wallace tapped the bench with his fingers. Mr. Callahan, he murmured quietly, respond to the boy's query. Were you under any duress to ensure Marcus's conviction? Callahan moistened his mouth. I'm unable to discuss that. Marcus grinned a little. That's a yeah. Murmurs broke out in the courtroom. The cameras clicked and the reporters whispered. Callahan balled his hands into fists. He grabbed his briefcase and said, I have to go. However, the judge struck his gavel before he could move. You, Judge Wallace said. You will sit down, Mr. Callahan. Callahan stopped. After hesitating, he sat down again gradually. He had trembling hands. Marcus felt his heart race. He nearly broke through this barrier. Judge Wallace looked to the cop who had made the statement first. I want the complete report on this alleged confession, officer. Now, the cop took a swallow. I don't have it with me. The judge yelled, then go get it. Until we see it, we won't leave. After hesitating, the officer gave a brief nod and hurried out of the room. Marcus let out a breath, his thoughts whirling. He had anticipated getting his name cleared today. He didn't think he would bump into something so much larger. Judge Wallace struck his gavel once more. While we await that report, we will take a half-hour break. The court is not on break. People were standing, whispering, and stretching. Marcus looked at his mom. You see, I warned you that something wasn't right. She gave her temples a rub. I'm going to have a heart attack from you, baby. Marcus grinned a little, but he was still unable to unwind. He left the courtroom and made his way to the corridor drinking fountain. It took him a moment to ponder, but he was about to press the button when a hand seized his shoulder. Marcus stiffened. Slowly, he turned. Captain Reynolds stood with a chilly look on his face. Kid, you have no idea what you're playing with. Marcus gulped hard, but his eyes remained fixed on the object. Reynolds leaned closer. He said in a whisper, You'll leave this right now if you're intelligent. Marcus pushed himself to his feet. What if I don't? Reynolds grinned, but not in a kind way. You might not get home after that. Marcus felt a shiver go down his back. Reynolds released his grip on his shoulder and left as if nothing had occurred. Marcus's heart pounded as he stood motionless. Just now, he had received a threat, and now he was certain of one thing. Whatever was happening, whatever it was they wanted to conceal, it was larger than he had ever thought, and they would stop at nothing to silence him. Marcus's heart was racing as he remained motionless at the water fountain. The words of Captain Reynolds replayed in his mind. You might not get home after that. It wasn't a joke. The threat wasn't meaningless. Reynolds was serious based on the tone of his voice, the icy smile, and the lifeless expression in his eyes. Marcus forced himself to breathe and swallowed hard. He had read about cover-ups and corruption, but he never imagined that he would be involved in one. It was real now. He was also in jeopardy. His legs outpaced his thoughts as he turned back toward the courtroom. He had to inform someone. Judge Wallace, his mother, anybody who would pay attention. His instincts, however, cried out to him as he grabbed for the courtroom door. Hold on. Consider. He had been threatened by Reynolds in a public corridor. Either one of two things was implied. Reynolds acted carelessly. Reynolds was aware that Marcus would not be believed. Marcus's fists clenched. He required evidence. He required a strategy. He inhaled deeply, turned his back on the door, and hurried to the courthouse exit. He was not fleeing. He had a hunting trip planned. The afternoon sun was scorching outside. Marcus's mind was racing as he looked around the parking lot. Reynolds was a member of a larger group. That much was obvious. It had been a fraudulent confession. The trial was hurried. And now, was a police commander personally attempting to frighten him away? Marcus needed to know what they were concealing. He swiftly texted on his phone after taking it out. "Come to the library with me." Immediate. He forwarded the message to Elijah, his closest friend. Then he began to move. The black SUV parked across the street went unnoticed by him, or the man who was inside observing him leave. When Marcus arrived, the library was almost deserted. The air was heavy with the smell of ink and old books. A reassuring aroma among all of this mayhem. Elijah was there already, seated at the rear table where they always sit. "Bro, you had better have a valid reason for criticizing me." Elijah leaned forward and spoke. "I was playing a game at the time." Marcus took a seat. "I need your assistance." Elijah blinked. "Hold on. Do you need my assistance? Does the boy genius require assistance?" Marcus remained expressionless. "It's serious." Elijah scowled. "All right. What's happening?" Marcus spoke more softly. "I believe the police are hiding something. And to hide that, I believe they were prepared to put me in jail." Elijah gazed. "What?" Marcus gave a brief explanation of everything. The hurried case, the phony admission, the threat from Captain Reynolds. Elijah whistled softly when he was done. "Man, you must leave the city." Marcus gave a headshake. "No, I must discover what they are concealing." Elijah ran a hand across his face and moaned. "You must constantly be challenging, don't you?" Marcus grinned a little. "If I weren't, you wouldn't be my friend." Elijah gave a snort. "It's true." He bent over. "All right, what is the strategy?" Marcus let out a breath. "First, we learn who the actual suspect, the person they detained, is." Elijah gave a nod. "Are you considering a phony name? Or phony individual?" Marcus gave his chin a rub. "It might be either. However, I have a thought." He swiftly texted on his phone after taking it out. "City database, juvenile arrest records." A page to log in appeared. Leaning over, Elijah read the screen. "You are aware that you must have a valid login in order to enter, aren't you?" Marcus remained silent. He just launched a new app. Elijah's gaze expanded. "Hey, bro. No. The police database is being hacked by you?" Marcus said, tapping away. "Not hacking. Just borrowing access." Elijah blew a whistle. "You will undoubtedly be arrested once more." With his fingers flying, Marcus disregarded him. He was in a matter of seconds. The screen was filled with a list of recent arrests. He immediately browsed, and suddenly it appeared. Nathaniel Brooks is the suspect. 19 years old. Burglary and crime. Admit it? Indeed. The file was clicked by Marcus. However, there was essentially nothing in place of a thorough report. No muksot. Not a single fingerprint. Just a confession and a name. Elijah scowled. "Strange, isn't it?" Marcus gave a nod. "Very strange." He slid down, until he discovered something much more bizarre. An hour before to the robbery, Nathaniel Brooks had been taken into custody. Marcus's heart froze. Elijah took hold of his arm. "Are you saying to wait?" Marcus's voice hardly made a sound. "Before the crime was committed, they had him arrested. It implies." For him, Elijah completed the sentence. "They arranged it." The lads gazed at one another. Elijah then reached for his phone. "We must inform someone." However, Marcus's screen displayed a new message before he could reply. A banned phone number. "Give up digging. Otherwise." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Then he caught a glimpse of something through the library window. An SUV that is black, parked on the other side. Observing them, Marcus took Elijah by the arm. "We must leave. Right now." Elijah gulped hard when he spotted the SUV. Yes, well thought out. The pair of youngsters leaped to their feet and made their way to the rear exit. The man in the SUV did not pick up his radio in front of them. "They are in motion. Adhere to them." The hunt was on in an instant. Elijah and Marcus crept out the back door of the library. Their hearts were racing. The alley was covered in long shadows as the sun began to set. Elijah took Marcus by the arm. "Man, we are currently in serious difficulties." Marcus remained silent. He sensed it, the pressure of something far larger than themselves. Something hazardous. The dark SUV was still stationary. Marcus, however, was certain that they would soon be pursued. He looked across at Elijah. We must find a secure location. Elijah gave a nod. Yes. Where though? Marcus's mind worked quickly. His home? No, it's too clear. When they took him into custody, the police were already present. Where's Elijah? The same issue. Then he had a thought. Marcus said, my uncle's barbershop. Elijah scowled. Is that the one on 12th Street? Yes. He closes late. He also has security cameras all throughout the place. We'll have evidence if they follow us there. Elijah paused. I don't know, man. This reminds me of something from an espionage film. Additionally, men like us never survive in spy films. Marcus forced a tiny grin. Then let us ensure that we do. Elijah let out a sigh. All right, but I'll be haunting you if I die. Marcus gave a nod. Good deal. Let's go now. They took off, avoiding the main routes and slicing through smaller streets. Every step Marcus took made his heart race. But the SUV was gone when he looked back. Elijah also took notice. Oh, that bothers me. Neither did Marcus. They had been observed. Now, though, they were being pursued now. The barbershop was located at the intersection of Main and 12th. Jackson's Cuts was shown on a tiny brick structure with a neon sign that flickered. The glass door was knocked on by Marcus. Terrence Jackson, his uncle, emerged a few seconds later. There were flecks of gray in his thick beard. And when he saw Marcus, his weary eyes opened. Why are you out this late, boy? We must go inside, Uncle T. It's crucial. Despite his scowl, Terrence opened the door and allowed them in. Marcus looked to his uncle as soon as the door closed. Someone is pursuing us, he whispered quietly. Terrence's face grew stern. Who? Marcus paused. Police. His uncle tensed up. Are you serious? Marcus gave a nod. With a sigh, Terrence wiped his face. Come to the rear. The scent of freshly cut hair and aftershave filled the shop. The radio was playing vintage jazz, and the clippers were still on the counter. After guiding them to his office, Terrence shut the door. All right, he said. Speak. Marcus filled him in on everything. Captain Reynolds' warning, the fictitious case, the fictitious confession, and now the enigmatic SUV. Terrence appeared enraged by the time he was done. His uncle shook his head and mumbled, That's why I don't trust none of them. They merely cover it up when they are caught doing anything they want. Marcus let out a breath. I require evidence. Something substantial. Something capable of defeating them. After giving it some thought, Terrence took out his phone. He remarked, I got a guy. Elijah's gaze expanded. Do you have a man? Terrence claimed that everyone has a guy. I'm also really excellent at spotting stuff that individuals would rather keep hidden. He hesitated after dialing a number. A few rings later, someone answered. A deep voice responded. Who is this? Terrence said, It's T. Please do me a favor. The other person's voice hesitated. What sort of favor? Terrence gave Marcus a quick look. Someone needs to investigate a name for me. Brooks Nathaniel. Arrested allegedly for breaking and entering. If he exists at all, I must know. There was a faint laugh from the man on the phone. Oh, it sounds like trouble. Terrence responded, It is. Are you able to assist? The voice hummed. Let me have 1 hour. The line then stopped working. Marcus exhaled deeply. We're waiting now. Terrence gave a nod. Yes. Meanwhile, we remain where we are, but outdoors. There was a movement. It was originally seen by Elijah. His face turned white. Oh, Marcus? Marcus pivoted. Through the blinds, in the light of a street lamp. Across the street, the black SUV was parked. Awaiting. Observing. Elijah took a swallow. All right, the plan has changed. Instead, we perish here. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. They weren't only being pursued. They were being held captive. It seemed like an eternity for the following hour. The SUV remained stationary. Nobody left. It did nothing but sit. Next, it buzzed on Terrence's phone. The voice was deep. We have an issue. Terrence scowled. What sort of issue is it? The man let out a sigh. Brooks Nathaniel? He doesn't exist. Marcus's blood froze. What? Not a record. No past. Not a single fingerprint. He seemed to have been created out of thin air. Terrence muttered an expletive. Marcus's heart was racing. A ghost had been taken into custody. someone who is not real. To ensure that he accepted responsibility, Elijah held the table tightly. Oh, we're so dead. Next, the front door thudded loudly. There was a shadow outside the store. Marcus stopped. Terrence reached behind his desk and took out a bat. "Remain behind me," he muttered. One more thump, then a voice. Deep, not familiar. "Marcus Jackson, we must speak." Marcus felt his heart race. They had located him, and they were entering immediately. There was another knock. "Marcus Jackson, we are aware that you are inside." Marcus took a deep breath. He balled his hands into fists. Beside him, Elijah's breathing was too rapid. Uncle Terrence's back was so tightly held that his knuckles were white. Terrence whispered, "Back door." "You too. Right now." Marcus paused. "However, right now." Marcus took hold of Elijah's sleeve and dragged him to the rear. The lane led to the barbershop's exit, but it meant something if they were being watched. They were already aware of it, but there was nothing they could do. Terrence took a step forward. He squared his shoulders. Who was inquiring? He made a call. A pause. "Next, Mr. Jackson, open the door for me. There is no need for this to become messy." Elijah and Marcus crept into the rear corridor. "Man, we're gonna die," Elijah whispered. "In fact, we will die." "Quit talking," Marcus muttered, cracking open the escape door a little. A blast of icy air struck them. There was nobody in the alley. For the time being, Marcus inhaled deeply. "All right," Elijah nodded. "We run on 3. 1, 2. Prior to Marcus saying 3, another SUV entered the alley. The tight room was flooded with light from its blazing headlights. Their sole escape route was blocked as the automobile skidded to a stop. Marcus slammed his heart against Elijah's ribs as he tugged him back. They were confined. Terrence was not going to back down inside. "Do you have a warrant?" He made a call, positioned directly behind the entrance. Quiet, and then another voice. Controlled, smooth, and low. "Jackson, mister," that's what the voice said. "All we're doing is talking." Terrence laughed. "It's funny. That is not new to me." Next, boom. Someone slammed at the door, making it tremble. Terrence stepped back. It was a calm voice on the other end. "Don't make things more difficult than they need to be." Terrence gripped the bat more tightly. Marcus's mind raced outside. Only a few seconds remained before the occupant of the SUV exited. Marcus didn't want to consider that after they did. He looked across at Elijah. Scale the fence? He was stared at by Elijah. "What?" "That is our only option," Marcus stated. "Climb." After hesitating, Elijah sprang into action and jumped. As he clambered up, his sneakers slipping against the chain-link fence, it rocked. Marcus trailed behind, clutching the icy steel and raising himself. The SUV doors opened beneath them. The footsteps were heard by Marcus. Then a voice. "They're there." Marcus ascended more quickly. Too sluggish. His ankle was grabbed. He kicked forcefully, but the hold was firm. A wave of panic swept over him. Elijah made it to the summit. "Man, hurry up." Marcus clenched his jaw and kicked once more. More difficult. The hold relaxed. Marcus's fingertips scraped the metal as he yanked himself up. Next, a shot. Only a few inches from his hand, the bullet struck the barrier. Elijah gave a yelp. Completely. Marcus continued. Avoided looking down. Dropping, he flung his leg over. His feet struck the floor. He forced himself to move despite the pain shooting up his ankle. Elijah took hold of his arm. "Run." They ran away. The men from the SUV clambered up the fence behind them. Elijah and Marcus, however, had already left. Their legs burned as they ran, until the sensation of flames in their lungs. They ran across old, broken sidewalks, past flickering streetlights, and through alleys. At last, they took cover in an abandoned parking garage. They fell, hiding behind a line of deserted cars. Elijah was having trouble breathing. "I despise you." Ignoring him, Marcus peered over the hood of a rusty automobile. No SUVs in sight. No footsteps. Elijah rubbed his face and sat up for the moment. "What did we just flee from, man? The real FBI?" Marcus remained silent. The gunshot was still on his mind. They were no longer merely attempting to frighten him. They wanted to murder him. Terrence stood amid the rubble of his front door back at the barbershop. The men had left. However, the warning was obvious. His nephew had approached something hazardous too closely. And now? There was no going back now. Except for the sound of Elijah and Marcus gasping for air, the parking garage was quiet. An abandoned car's chilly metal brushed into Marcus's back. His thoughts were racing. They were on the verge of death. This was no longer a game. Elijah dabbed at his perspiration. What did we just get away from, bro? Marcus gave a head shake. I'm not sure. However, I'm aware of one thing. Elijah took a swallow. What? Marcus gave him a direct look. To protect their secret, they are prepared to kill. There was a thick quiet between them. Elijah laughed nervously. I thought that school was stressful, man. However, no. On the verge of being shot? Much worse. Marcus remained expressionless. We are unable to return home. They'll be observing. Elijah let out a breath. Fantastic. So, where are we going? Marcus paused to reflect. Then he took his phone out. Only one individual remained to be contacted. A sleek black automobile pulled up to the parking garage's rear entrance 15 minutes later. Wearing trousers and a stylish blazer, a woman in her mid-30s emerged. Her face was unreadable, and her long braids hung over her shoulders. Her sunglasses were pushed up onto her head. Marcus Jackson, you're a master at causing trouble. Marcus exhaled a sigh of relief. Aunt Vanessa. Vanessa Jackson practiced defense law, a decent one, among the greatest, and she was their only hope for survival at the moment. Elijah blinked. How come you didn't call your family lawyer sooner? Marcus gave a shrug. It's better late than never. Vanessa crossed her arms. Get into the vehicle. Right now. They did not quarrel. Vanessa grabbed the wheel firmly as she pulled off as soon as the car doors closed. She said, I've been hearing things. Police are promoting an illogical case. Witnesses are going missing. And now, is my nephew in a desperate situation? Marcus gave a nod. It's larger than we anticipated. For the robbery, the man they detained, there is no such thing as him. Vanessa's mouth pushed shut. Aunt V, Marcus went on, they set me up. They also made an effort to silence me when I began to ask questions. They're after me now. Vanessa breathed out slowly. Yes, that's what I assumed it to be. Marcus scowled. Hold on. You were aware? Vanessa remained focused on the road. I was not positive. However, I've seen similar situations in the past. They choose a victim, someone who is simple to blame. The case is then swiftly closed before anyone investigates further. Elijah gave a head shake. However, why Marcus? Through the rearview mirror, Vanessa gave him a quick glance. Because Marcus is intelligent. Additionally, intelligent children pose a threat to those who enjoy breaking the law. She headed toward the outskirts of town, turning down a side street. Elijah raised his head. Where exactly are we heading, I wonder? Vanessa's mouth clenched. Somewhere secure. That didn't sound good to Marcus. Where? Vanessa remained silent. Is implied that she had no faith in any part of the city. They arrived at a tiny, dilapidated motel 20 minutes later. Weakly, the neon sign buzzed in the darkness. After parking, Vanessa turned to look at them. Pay close attention. Tonight, the two of you will remain here. I made a cash payment. No paper trace. No one is aware of your presence. Marcus folded his arms. How about you? Vanessa let out a breath. I have some calls to make. Determine the depth of this. But stay in this room. You understand? Elijah nodded so quickly that he almost lost his head. Oh, believe me, I don't intend to travel anywhere. After hesitating, Marcus nodded. I understand. Vanessa's gaze grew softer. I am aware of your fear. However, I will not allow anything to happen to you. Afterward, she grabbed a gun from her glove compartment. Elijah almost went out of the vehicle. Whoa, all right, this got way too real, I guess. Vanessa put the rifle in her back after making sure it was safe. I'm prepared to employ force if they are. Marcus gazed at her. Are you sure it's that bad? Vanessa looked him in the eye. Marcus, they shot at you. What are your thoughts? A cold shiver went through Marcus. Yes, it really was that awful. Elijah locked the door of the motel room. Twice. And then he fell on the bed. Okay, I'm finished. Officially, today is the worst day of my life. Marcus sat looking out at the parking lot from the window. The motel was not very good. Wallpaper that has faded. A television that is buzzing. But they were safe, at least for the moment. Elijah took a seat. Now what? Marcus let out a breath. Right now? We hold off. Elijah let out a moan. I detest that response. Marcus grinned a little. I agree. Elijah gave his face a rub. Man, I would have reconsidered our entire friendship if I had realized that being your best friend would mean nearly dying. Marcus laughed. It's too late now. His smile, however, was short-lived, because he knew in his heart this was not the end of it. Not even close. Then his phone began to vibrate. Blocked phone number. Just one message. We are aware of your location. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. Then the lights outside the motel went out. By the window, a shadow shifted. There was a visitor, and they weren't knocking this time. The lights in the motel flickered out. Marcus's chest grew constricted. The sudden darkness made it difficult for him to see Elijah's face. But the sudden intake of breath was audible to him. A silhouette passed by the window. Then another. Next, a click. The knob on the door turned. Elijah muttered, "Oh no." Marcus was a quick mover. Taking Elijah by the shirt, he pulled him in the direction of the restroom. Go into hiding, Marcus muttered. Elijah remained silent. They closed the door as they slipped inside. Boom! The entrance of the motel sprang open. The floor was thudded by heavy boots. In Marcus's ears, his heart thumped. He was scarcely breathing as he leaned his back against the wall. There was only a shower with a thin curtain, a sink, and a toilet in the little bathroom. Very little cover. Elijah's hands trembled. Marcus sensed it. Voices whispered from the other room, too low to comprehend. Next. Steps. Approaching. Marcus's thoughts whirled. They were finished if they opened the door. They had nowhere to flee to. He ran his fingertips along the toilet tank's edge. Something came to mind. Marcus gently and carefully removed the toilet's back lid and gave it to Elijah. Elijah's gaze widened. Marcus's lips. Prepare yourself. Elijah gave a nod. Next, the door to the bathroom squeaked open. The entryway was shadowed. A tall, broad-shouldered man dressed in dark clothing entered and looked around the cramped room. Marcus's throat tightened each breath. The shower curtain caught the man's attention. He reached for it slowly. Marcus stiffened. Next, Elijah swung the lid of the toilet tank. Break! With a curse, the man staggered back. Marcus grabbed the only other weapon within reach and pushed forward. A cheap hairdryer from a motel. He swung it like his life depended on it, even though it wasn't much. Wham! The man fell, stunned. Elijah didn't hold back. Taking Marcus with him, he ran out the door. The room at the motel was ruined. Drawers were pulled out, and the bed was flipped over. Marcus, however, hardly had time to think about it, because there was another man standing close to the entryway. This one was armed as well. Elijah and Marcus skidded to a halt. The man pointed the rifle at them while wearing all black. Where are you heading, in your opinion? Marcus, Elijah muttered. I don't want to die in a motel. Neither did Marcus. His mind worked quickly. The man had not yet fired. That had significance. He had no intention of killing them. Not yet, anyhow. Come with me, the man said. Right now. Marcus took a swallow. His heart was pounding. He gave Elijah a quick look. Then a loud bang came from outside, followed by back at the man. Tires squealed. For a brief moment, the man's head turned. Marcus shifted. He snatched up the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it with all his might. Before, the man hardly had time to react. Crash! The glass broke. The rifle fell to the ground with a clatter. Marcus didn't hold out. Taking Elijah's arm, he took off running. They were blinded by spotlights outside. A vehicle skidded to a halt. The door of the driver flew open. Vanessa, get me in, she screamed. Elijah and Marcus jumped into the vehicle. Vanessa slammed the gas before the doors had even closed. Tires squealed. The vehicle sped ahead and left the parking lot. Marcus caught a glimpse of the shooter stumbling outside through the rearview mirror. Beside him, another black SUV came up. They had not finished. They intended to pursue them. Vanessa wasted no time. What? Did you? Do you? Marcus inhaled deeply. I believe I nearly killed us." Elijah raised his hands in the air. "Do you think?" With a muttered curse, Vanessa turned sharply to the right. "I instructed you not to move." Marcus gave a headshake. "Still, they discovered us." Vanessa remained silent, since she was aware that he was correct. Behind them, the SUV roared to life. The headlights are flashing. Then there was another, then another. A total of 3. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. "And look," Vanessa whispered. They were overtaken by the first SUV, which stumbled ahead. In an attempt to contain them, the second veered sideways. Elijah held on to the seat. "OV? I also truly don't want to get killed in a car pursuit." Vanessa tightened her jaw. "Then wait." Next, she applied the brakes firmly. Marcus jerked his head forward. Elijah screamed, choking. The first SUV was unprepared and made a sharp spin to get away from them. The second SUV was clipped by it. Crash! The two vehicles slammed into a streetlight after spinning out. The third SUV continued to approach. The gas was floored by Vanessa. The vehicle sped ahead. Marcus's heart pounded. Are they vanishing? Vanessa's mouth was clenched. Not quite yet. She took a detour into a side road. Then another. Next, there was a blockage on the road ahead. More SUVs that are black. Awaiting. Elijah let out a moan. "Do you mean me? What is their number?" Vanessa's hand gripped the steering wheel more tightly. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. They were encircled. Moreover, this time, no more place to flee to. The brakes were pressed by Vanessa. Just inches from the black SUVs obstructing the road ahead, the automobile came to a stop. There were additional headlights behind them. Captured, Marcus balled his hands into fists. It pained how fiercely his heart pumped. Elijah's breathing was labored. "Oh no, I die like this. In a vehicle, as I always feared." Vanessa's hand gripped the steering wheel more tightly. She tightened her jaw, remained composed. Marcus's head was swallowed. "Aren't they here to converse?" Vanessa remained silent, as everyone was aware of the reality. The doors of the SUV opened. Men came out. Everyone is wearing black. No badges, no uniforms, only power. Next, a final door opened. Captain Reynolds emerged. His face was unreadable. He proceeded, coming to a halt a little distance from Vanessa's vehicle. Then, slowly, he held up his hand and gestured for them to leave. Hovering above the gear shift were Vanessa's fingertips. Marcus remained in the vehicle. Marcus, however, was already aware. They had to have answers in order to escape this situation. He desired them as well. Each and every one. Marcus unlocked the door and left before Vanessa could stop him. Elijah muttered an expletive. "Man, what are you doing?" Vanessa gave a hiss. "Marcus." However, it was too late. Marcus took a step forward, in Reynolds' direction. There was nobody on the street. The hum of the motors was the only sound. Reynolds looked at him, a courageous child. Marcus paused. "I'm not courageous." He spoke steadily. "Simply put, I'm not dumb." Reynolds grinned, disputed. Marcus clenched his hands. Reynolds shrugged and said, "You try to frame me. You were the ideal selection." Marcus tightened his jaw. "Why?" Reynolds breathed out slowly. "Do you truly wish to know?" Marcus did not flinch. "Indeed." Reynolds stepped forward. His face seemed crisper in the streetlights. "More difficult." Reynolds responded in a silky voice. "Because, Marcus, the system isn't for you. You pose a threat to the system." Marcus scowled. "What?" Reynolds let out a sigh. "Are you a smart kid? The fissures are visible. The imperfections. You pose inquiries. Furthermore, asking inquiries can be harmful." Marcus took a swallow. Reynolds went on in a composed tone. "Too quiet." He explained, "You see, we don't just need criminals to keep the machine running. The proper criminals are what we need. The ones for whom no one will fight. Those who, based only on their appearance, people will believe to be guilty." His gut churned. Reynolds' head cocked. "If we had imprisoned you, what do you suppose would have happened?" Marcus was aware of the solution. A black child with intelligence in the system? He would have been completely engulfed. It wouldn't have been questioned. Nobody would have given a damn. Reynolds gave a small smile. "But you retaliated instead." His gaze grew gloomy. You know too much now. Marcus's throat tightened each breath. Reynolds faced his soldiers, grabbed them. The atmosphere changed. Elijah leaped off the vehicle. "Oh, guy, hurry up." Pulling her revolver, Vanessa flung open the door. "Don't even consider it." Reynolds seems unconcerned. "Miss Jackson, put down your gun. There are more people than you." Marcus's mind was racing. He was just one step away from being lost forever. You are only one step away from being buried in lies. He only had one chance, one opportunity. Before the system engulfed him, he had to disrupt it. Next, a notion, his only opportunity. Marcus reached into his pocket, not for a firearm, not for a weapon, for his mobile phone. Then he hit the play button. The air was filled with Reynolds' voice. "You see, criminals are not the only thing we need to keep the machine going. The proper criminals are what we need." It was a clear recording. The officers stopped. Reynolds' expression became stony. Marcus spoke steadily. "As soon as I got out of the car, I started recording." Reynolds tightened his jaw. Marcus raised the phone. "And now, I am forwarding this recording to all of the journalists I know." Elijah smiled. "And guess what? Corruption scandals are popular on the internet." Reynolds twitched his eye. "Do you believe that will prevent us?" Marcus stepped forward. "No," he responded. "However, it will ensure that everyone recognizes you." The men of Reynolds paused. The game was different now. The truth was going to be revealed to the entire globe. Through his nose, Reynolds released his breath. Next, he grinned, a slow smile of knowledge. "Good job," he said. He then faced his men. "Get down." The officers brought their guns down. Reynolds turned to face Marcus again. "It's not over yet." Marcus did not flinch. "I am aware." Reynolds grinned. "I'll see you soon after that." He then took a step back, climbed into the SUV, and drove off. The others went after them. As simple as that. They had vanished. Quiet. Elijah drew a deep breath. "All right. That was crazy." Vanessa put her gun in its holster. Still tense. "Marcus, that was risky." Marcus let out a breath. "I am aware." She looked at him. "I take it you were prepared to die for that?" Marcus took a swallow, then gave a nod. Vanessa's gaze grew softer. Next, abruptly, she gave him a hug. Close. For a moment, Marcus stiffened, then relaxed. Elijah gave a clap of his hands. "Can't we, never do it again?" Marcus exhaled deeply. "No assurances." Elijah let out a moan. "I despise you." Marcus grinned. "I am aware." The recording was all over by dawn. News outlets, blog, social media. Outrage erupted throughout the city. They started looking into it. Careers came to an end. Reynolds, though, he vanished. No fees, no arrest. Lost. Marcus sat on his porch and gazed at the sunset a week later. Beside him sat Vanessa. "You succeeded." Marcus remained silent. Because deep down, it wasn't over, he knew. Reynolds remained outside, observing, awaiting, and one day, they would reappear for him. Next time, though, he would be prepared. The city was still burning a week later. Reporters referred to it as the decade's biggest scandal. There were protests. Arrests were demanded. The mayor promised transformation during emergency press briefings. Marcus, however, was wiser. Nothing changed in the system. It simply hid its cracks more effectively. And the largest of all cracks? Captain Reynolds had left. Not taken into custody. Not dismissed. Lost. Nobody was aware of the location. Nobody knew how. And that presented a challenge. Because Marcus was certain of one thing. Reynolds was not done yet. Marcus was sitting on his porch looking through his phone's news feed. Beside him, Vanessa leaned on the railing. Crossed arms. "I'm sure you're still considering it." Marcus didn't raise his head. Naturally, Vanessa let out a sigh. "They were exposed by you. You prevailed." Marcus's jaw tightened. "No, I simply forced them to go underground." He wasn't a moron. Reynolds and others were caught, but they were not imprisoned. They shifted. They adjusted. They bided their time. With a cola in hand, Elijah ascended the stairs. "I'm just trying to enjoy my day, and you guys are sitting here acting all dramatic?" At last, Marcus raised his head. "Are you not concerned?" Elijah laughed. "Oh, I am afraid." However, I might puke up if I take even 5 seconds to reflect on how close we were to being murdered. Instead, I'm just feeling. Vanessa grinned. Clever plan. Marcus laid his phone down and sighed. I don't understand. Reynolds ought to be imprisoned. He ought to stand trial. Rather, he simply disappeared. Vanessa let out a breath. He and other guys always have a way out. Elijah gestured at Marcus. And it's always necessary for guys like you to snoop around and make things worse. It wasn't denied by Marcus, as he had already begun to dig. When the house was quiet that evening, Marcus took out his laptop and locked the door to his bedroom. There must have been a trail if Reynolds had vanished. Over the past week, Marcus had gained some important knowledge. The individuals who operated the system, they were careless. They thought nobody was looking. Marcus was observing. He accessed news articles, government databases, and even broke into private security locks. And it was there, a record of a flight. Ticket that is only good for one way. Private aircraft. Final destination. Marcus felt his stomach clench. In Washington, D.C. Reynolds was still there. He was now higher up. Marcus's fingers lingered over the keys as he gazed at the screen. He might disregard it, act as though it never happened, act as though he were a typical 12-year-old. However, that was untrue. He had never been typical, and now, the stakes had never been higher. Marcus let out a breath. After that, he grabbed his phone and dialed Vanessa. Her voice sounded sleepy as she responded. Marcus? The time is 2 in the morning. Marcus didn't think twice. Reynolds is in Washington, D.C. Quiet. Then Vanessa swore. Send me everything. Marcus had it already. She let out a breath. All right, I'm going to phone some people. But Marcus answered. I know. This poses a risk. She let out a sigh. I was about to tell you to get into bed. However, that's also true. Marcus grinned. Not a chance. Vanessa hung up after muttering something beneath her breath. Marcus shut down his computer. Once he had defeated Reynolds, right now, he was going to kill him. Vanessa arrived the following morning with a travel ticket and 2 cups of coffee. Elijah almost choked while eating breakfast. Hold on. What's going on now? Marcus received the ticket from Vanessa, who passed it across the table. Are you coming or not? Marcus took a look at the ticket. It wasn't for him alone. Another one was there. It bore Elijah's name. Elijah blinked. Oh no. Marcus grinned. You're already in this. It's too late. Elijah let out a moan, tumbling across the table. I really despise you, buddy. Marcus picked up the ticket. D.C., the capital, the center of power. Reynolds had fled to that location. Marcus was heading there. Because he wasn't just playing defense this time. He was going to them for the battle. And until Reynolds paid, he was not going anywhere. Marcus gazed out the window as the jet landed at Reagan National Airport. The Washington, D.C. skyline, shining in the dawn light, it spread before him. It was this, the last action. Elijah yawned and stretched. Okay, I'll simply state it. Officially, this is the most crazy thing we have ever done. Marcus grinned. Furthermore, we haven't even begun yet. Vanessa pulled her away. Okay, pay attention. We're not travelers. There's a reason we are here. To track down Reynolds, bring him to light, and ensure that he is never able to do this again. Elijah let out a moan. Cool. Casually eliminating corruption in the government. Not a huge deal. Vanessa looked across at Marcus. We know what? Taking out his phone, Marcus opened the data he had gathered. A week ago, Reynolds flew here on a private plane, Marcus stated. After that, however, he is not mentioned in the public record. Elijah scowled. He's either hiding or something. Marcus concluded, or someone is hiding him. Vanessa let out a breath. Next, let's begin at the origin. She walked over to the rental vehicle desk. We're going hunting. The journey across D.C. was not like home. The power wasn't loud here. There was silence. Concealed. The city was tidy. The structures were polished. Marcus sensed it though. Buried beneath all that polish is corruption. Elijah pressed the GPS button. Okay, so, just where are we heading? Marcus looked through his mobile device. I was able to identify the private security company that rented the plane. They deal with delicate government issues. Vanessa arched an eyebrow, which is code for, we clean up mess that people don't want to be seen by others. Marcus gave a nod. And you know who recently joined them as a consultant? He flipped his phone over. Reynolds' face appeared on a security badge that was displayed on the screen. Elijah let out a moan. "Come on, please." Did this man get a promotion? Vanessa gripped the wheel more tightly. "Yes, it operates that way." Marcus let out a breath. "Therefore, we are not limited to simply eliminating him." Determination blazed in his eyes. "Along with him, we must bring down the entire system." A block from the Helios security building, they parked, a glass-covered, elegant tower. Marcus looked toward the doorway. "Edvatid Yuri, there are cameras everywhere." Elijah let out a sigh. "I'll guess. Do you have a wild plan?" Marcus smiled. "You are very familiar with me." Elijah let out a moan. "I detest the fact that I do." It was an easy strategy. Marcus would enter covertly. Elijah would distract himself. From outside, Vanessa would pull the strings. And if it was successful, they would have all they required to put an end to Reynolds' life. Marcus used a key card that had been stolen from an unwary guard to sneak into the staff entrance. The building was frigid inside, all glass and steel. He avoided the cameras by moving swiftly and staying low. His heart thumped. There was no getting away if he got caught here. But now he was too far gone to turn back. Elijah, meanwhile, did what he did best, cause mayhem. Like he belonged, he walked into the main lobby. Elijah smiled when a security gave him a dubious glance. "Hello. Hey, are you hiring? People are needed for top-secret government scandals, I've heard." The guard scowled. "You have to go, sir." Elijah gave a solemn nod. Cool. But before I leave, who oversees the Department of Corruption?" The radio of the guard came up with a crackling. "There is a commotion in the lobby." Elijah smiled. "Excellent." As Elijah was being watched by security, Marcus crept inside the main server room. In the dark light, rows of computers shone quietly. He began downloading everything after plugging in a flash drive. Emails, transactions, and private documents. The reality. Everything. Vanessa went back outdoors and used her laptop to watch the broadcasts. As she looked over the incoming data, her jaw tensed. "This is larger than we anticipated," she whispered. Elijah took a quick look over her shoulder. "How much larger?" Vanessa swung the screen around. Reynolds wasn't the only one. It was a network. Judges, police, entrepreneurs, even elected officials. Everybody is linked. Untouchable. So far. As the data finished uploading, Marcus's heart raced. He pulled the flash disk out. Then, the alarm went off. Security had located him. Over the intercom, a voice bellowed. Someone breaking into the server room. Marcus's heart froze. Next, one of the doors slammed, while remaining motionless. Reynolds. The space seemed more intimate. Reynolds grinned, crossed arms. "You wouldn't let this go, and I should have known that." Marcus gripped the flash disk more tightly. "I dislike unresolved matters." Reynolds stepped forward. "Is it genuinely your intention to leave this place?" Marcus grinned. "I doubt it. I am aware." Next, his earphone crackled with Vanessa's voice. "Right now." Boom. Fire alarms went off. The corridors were filled with smoke. And that's it. The building fell into disarray. Marcus didn't hold out. He took off running. Reynolds swore, pursuing him. The corridors were crowded with security. Marcus, however, was quicker. He ducked, slipping through doors, navigating across workplaces. Next, at the door he noticed Elijah, feverishly waving. "Go, man. Get moving." Marcus ran. Behind him, Reynolds shouted commands. "It's too late." Diving through the doors, Marcus did so, and wandered into Vanessa's escape vehicle. Before the guards could respond, she peeled out. Elijah fell back in his chair. "Oh, I believe I had a heart attack just now." Marcus smiled, taking deep breaths. The files were with him. They had everything. Reynolds, too? He was finished. The following morning, it made the headlines. Corruption was made public. Politicians, police, and a covert network were exposed. The truth was revealed to the globe. Arrests were made. Careers came to an end. Reynolds, too? Lost. Once more. A few days later, Marcus sat looking up at the sky from his porch. Beside him sat Vanessa. "You succeeded." Marcus remained silent, because deep down, he was aware Reynolds remained outside. And one day, They would cross paths again. Next time, though, Marcus wouldn't simply prevail. He would put a permanent end to the game. The system attempted to shatter him. However, they overlooked one point. Anything that is smarter than you cannot be broken. Marcus Jackson, too, was the most intelligent of all of them.